This is the Electro-Harmonix Percolator, a new and modernized take on the cult classic that is the harmonic percolator pedal. Now, the harmonic percolator originally came out in the 1970s out of Wisconsin, USA, and it is a unique take on the fuzz, distortion, overdrive, dirt box sort of thing. It's been made popular by players like Steve Albini over the years, and it can give you everything from push clean tones through to meaty overdrives and chaotic, gated, ripping, spluttery sorts of fuzzes, along with sounding like a broken mixing console or something like that. Now, this being an Electro-Harmonix version of a percolator pedal, it's very affordable. At time of launch, it's $99 or 99 euros, and I bought this one for myself, so this is not a sponsored video in any way, shape or form. And I was totally sold on this pedal when I saw the Electro-Harmonix video for it. I think it sounds amazing, and as a huge fan of post-punk and alternative rock myself, well, I instantly thought I can make some fantastically disgusting noises with this pedal. On the other hand, though, I don't really know what a harmonic percolator is. I mean, it is a unique take on the fuzz, the distortion and the overdrive, but how is it different to other fuzzes, distortions and overdrive? And that's what I want to help you guys, along with me, find out in this video. And I'm going to be putting the percolator up against 9 or 10 of my other favorite drives, fuzzes and distortions. We'll hear how similar and how different they sound, and hopefully by the end of the video, I and some of you will understand a bit better what a harmonic percolator style of circuit is, and whether or not you need to add one of these to your rig in 2026 and beyond. Now, there's going to be timestamps to each different part of the video down there if you'd like to go somewhere specific first, but let's kick things off with the specs and the features, everything you need to know about the Electro-Harmonix Percolator. Now, this pedal came out in June 2026. It looks very cool and DIY, and Steve Albini is the most famous player of the original harmonic percolator, and well, that really is something that I think is kind of a nod to his ethos. Now, with the percolator here, we've got 3 main knobs and a mini switch. The knobs are labeled balance, harmonics and bias, and the switch is drive and fuzz. The balance control is going to be your volume, the harmonics control is going to be your gain, and the bias control controls the input bias of the gain circuit. Now, when you've got this down low, the response is going to be nice and smooth sounding, and as you gradually turn it up, it's going to get sputtier and more gated, and when you're turned all the way up, it's going to be very cutting in that sort of a sense, very much a Velcro splattery sort of fuzz. And when you're somewhere in the middle with the bias control, you're almost going to get pseudo octave sort of effects going on with your tones, so make sure you listen out to those and use headphones if you can to listen to the musical parts of this video. Now, otherwise, we've got that 2-way mini switch here. When you've got this switch to fuzz, the clipping diodes in the circuit are going to be active, and that's going to give us that heavy, raucous fuzz sound. Switch it across to drive, though, and the clipping diodes are taken out of the circuit. That's going to give us more headroom, it's going to be louder on that side, and it's also going to change the character of the tone of the pedal. It's going to sound a bit more like a transistor overdrive or distortion pedal. So those are the main controls. Going back to that harmonics knob, I think that's a very interesting thing. You might wonder why they've got harmonics instead of gain, and that's because with the harmonic percolator circuit, even order harmonics are the order of the day. Now, the circuit really pushes those, it pushes the asymmetrical and the hard clipping as well, and that's something that helps make this a unique pedal. There is quite a bit of interesting literature out there about this pedal, by the way, the original harmonic percolator, and I will link to some of that down there if you'd like to find out more from people who know way more than I do about this pedal and the original circuit. So those are the main controls then. Here we've got your on-off foot switch, but like with many of the modern day Electro-Harmonix pedals, well, you can use this as a standard latching switch, as a standard on-off switch, or you can hold it down and use it as a momentary foot switch if you'd like to do that as well. Cool thing if that's your bag. Otherwise, you can power the percolator with a standard 9-volt power supply or a standard 9-volt battery, and if you take the back off and look under the hood, well, there's an internal trim pot too, and you can use this to adjust the overall gain of the effect and also the range of the pseudo octave sounds that you're going to hear depending on how you've got the bias control set. And there is going to be a part of the video later where I get my screwdrivers out and we do give the trim pot a twist to hear how significant those tonal changes are when we do so. But I appreciate that this is going to be a very long video, and like I said, timestamps to everything are going to be down there. But now it's time to get into the musical segment of today's proceedings. Now, I'm going to be running all of the pedals today into the front end of my Hughes & Kettner Ampman amplifier, usually on a pretty neutral clean setting on the amp, but I will occasionally switch to the crunch channel so we can hear the percolator going into an overdriven amp as well, because that's going to give us a different response. Now, to play the loops today, I'm going to be using my Boss RC10 looper, and yes, that's a Boss product, so it does have a buffer in it, and of course that means that all of the pedals are going to be running through the Boss's buffer. And I know that a pedal like this does sound a little bit different when you run it with and without a buffer, so I will again do a little segment where I play a couple of riffs where the Boss is in front of it with the buffer and where I'm going with the guitar cable straight into the front end of the percolator, so you can hear the difference. And believe you me, it's way less significant than you might think, but I know that players like Steve Albini did actually always choose to use a buffer with the percolator because it gives you a rawer, slightly louder, slightly trebly and more aggressive, abrasive sort of a tone. But you can make your own mind up on that. Like I said, timestamps to that bit is going to be down there as well. So the first loop that we're going to do then is going to be running just the percolator into the front end of the amp man, so we can really hear how versatile this pedal is and focus just on the percolator itself. We'll go between the drive and fuzz settings, we'll hear all of the different tones that we can get with the harmonics control, with the bias control, we'll use the clean and the crunch channel of the amplifier, and this riff, it's an alternative rock sort of a riff, is going to be played on the bridge humbucker of my Shergold Provocateur electric guitar. So let's listen to that now. Let me know what you think of the percolator in the comments. Yeah, straight away I just love the tones coming out of the Percolator, and there are a great many sounds to be had just from running this into a clean amp. And I do have to say, by the way, that I think I do prefer this running into a clean amp than an overdriven amp. But anyway, with the drive and fuzz settings, with the harmonics and the bias controls here, there are so many different sounds to be had with this pedal. It gives you a lovely clean boost if you want to do that, a really nice juicy meaty sort of a sound. And as you turn up the harmonics and as you wind up the bias as well, it goes into heavy distorted rock sort of a mode on the drive setting, and flick it across to the fuzz and you start to get some crazy gated, spluttery, squelchy, velcro sort of tones that the likes of Jack White, I think, would absolutely love. So this is a wonderful sounding pedal, and just using the Percolator I'm very, very impressed. But now it's time to hear some of my other pedals up against this one so we can hear where the Percolator falls in the overall tonal pyramid scheme of things. So we're going to start by running it up against three of my favourite overdrive pedals. I've got the Paul Cochran Timmy, we've got the Boss BD2 Blues Driver, and we've got the Benson Preamp. Three interesting flavours of overdrive, I think you might realise, and also you might be thinking, why has he chosen those? Well, there is a reason behind all three. Now the Timmy is, alongside the Greer Lightspeed, my favourite transparent overdrive pedal, and a transparent overdrive pedal should be as far away as possible from something like the Percolator, and it is going to be in many ways, that's clear. But at the same time, we've got this three-way mini switch in the middle of the Timmy, and if I flick that up to the top, that's going to give us asymmetrical clipping, just like the Percolator. That's possibly going to give us a more raucous sort of a tone. So I'm really looking forward to dialing in the Timmy and hearing how it sounds compared to the Percolator. Otherwise here we've got a bass and a treble control, and these are going to be cut controls. So as I'm turning them up, I'm actually turning them down. You'll get used to it. We've also got a volume and a gain control on the Timmy. So that's the Timmy, the absolute classic. And the other absolute classic that we're using here is the Boss BD2 Blues Driver. I think most of you will have played or owned one of these over the years. This is another fantastic overdrive pedal for anything from light, pushed clean tones, all the way through to pretty raucous tube amp exploding when you turn the gain all the way up. It's a very interesting pedal though, and it does do some quite grainy overdrive sorts of sounds, and that's why I thought it might be a decent partner for the Percolator. Now I bought the Blues Driver used for €30, and it's had a mod, which might have been the Keeley mod, I don't know. I will flick that mod switch on to give us a bit more low end, and some of the Keeley mods give you asymmetrical clipping. I don't know if that's the case with this pedal, but let's hear how that one sounds. And the third overdrive pedal is the Benson Preamp. Now this is a more boutique offering in a sense, and not many of you will have played this pedal, but it's based on one of Benson's amplifiers, and again, like the Timmy and like the Blues Driver, it can do some excellent, almost Fendery, really grainy sort of overdrive sounds. And as soon as I heard the Percolator in the Electro-Harmonix video, I thought straight away the Benson is going to be the ideal overdrive bedfellow for the Percolator. Now you've got four controls on this one: treble, volume, bass and drive, and that's it. A very simple pedal, but it sounds absolutely fantastic. So let's hear the Percolator up against the Timmy, the Blues Driver and the Benson Preamp then. Lots of knob tweaking to come. Let me know which one you think sounds best, and we'll talk a bit about them afterwards. And I should mention, by the way, that this loop is going to be played on the bridge single coil pickup of my Fender Telecaster. That was a really interesting comparison, actually. The three overdrives sound very different on the face of it compared to the Percolator, but dial them all in and you can get some very similar tones going on. Now, the Percolator is renowned as being a chaotic, abrasive sort of a fuzz, but dial things back a bit and go to the drive setting, and well, it does do some really nice, smooth overdrive tones. I'm not going to say it does the transparent overdrive thing that well, especially compared to something like the Timmy, but it does get you there. Now, with the Timmy pedal, we actually got really close on lower gain sorts of tones, and as I suspected, flicking up the toggle on the Timmy and going to asymmetrical clipping and turning that up and bumping that up a bit and really making it sound like it was starting to collapse in on itself, and we were getting some really gnarly sorts of tones. Nothing quite as extreme as the Percolator, but that effect is just one of the many reasons why I love the Timmy pedal so much. Now, the Boss Blues driver I thought sounded fantastic, and you do get some lovely grainy overdrive tones coming out of that pedal, but I thought it was the furthest of the three away from the Percolator in that sense. That's not a bad thing, it just sounds significantly different compared to the others. It's a great pedal, and I thought that when I flicked up the switch to engage the mod, whatever the mod is, we got a bit more bottom end, a bit of a fuller sound, and that actually sounded a little bit closer to the Percolator in some senses, but it's a very different sounding pedal overall. However, definitely a pairing that I could imagine you could use to your advantage if you wanted to do that. And finally, the Benson Preamp, yeah, as I thought too, the grainy tones that you can get out of that sounded really rather similar to the Percolator in some settings. What have we learned from this? Well, I think we've learned that the Percolator is a fantastic overdrive pedal, and you can get similar tones by using your other overdrives, but they're not quite going to get you there. And of course, overdrive is just one of the three main strings to the bow of the Percolator. So now it's time to hear it up against a few of my favorite distortion pedal circuits. Now, I've chosen again three distortion pedals here that should give us a few similarities in tone to the Percolator, but they're overall different flavors of distortion, and they might veer way off from what we get from the Percolator itself. Now, the first one here is going to be the Tone City Dry Martini. The Dry Martini is a clone of the Full Tone OCD, and I don't currently own a real OCD. I will rectify that at some point, but the OCD offers asymmetrical clipping. It's a hard clipping distortion as well, so we should have some significant similarities to some parts of the Percolator's output as well. Now, we've got four controls on this pedal, just like the real OCD. We've got a volume, a tone, and a gain, and we've got a two-way clipping switch, soft or hard, depending on how you've got it. Hard is basically going to give us more gain and probably more compression in these settings. So that's the Dry Martini, otherwise known as the OCD. And the second distortion that we're going to be using is the all-time classic from 1978. It's the Boss DS1. Over 1.5 million of these have been sold to date. It is a fantastic distortion pedal, very, very simple as all Boss pedals. You've got a tone, a distortion, and a level control, and it does what it does. It does old school distortion. I'm expecting this one to not get that close to the Percolator, but you never know. This is the distortion classic, it's the OG, so let's hear how it compares. And finally, when it comes to distortion, it's the other icon from 1978. It's the ProCo Rat, or in this case, the ProCo Rat 2. This is probably one of my favorite overall dirt boxes that I've ever had, and it goes between a clean boost, an overdrive, a distortion, and a fuzz, which in a sense should make it rather similar to the Percolator in some settings. This is a very raucous pedal, and I do expect it to be quite similar in some settings. Now, with the Rat, we've got a distortion, a filter, which again is going to be cutting out high end the more you turn it up, so it's like a backwards tone control, and a volume control. Very affordable pedal, built like a tank, just like the Boss DS1, and it should give the Percolator a real run for its money. So let's get that going now then, and just to let you know that the loop that we're going to be doing here is in drop D, and it's played on the bridge humbucker of my Epiphone Les Paul. Okay, so that was actually loads of fun as well, and with the distortion pedals I think we were getting closer to the Percolator in some settings. Now I really think that the Dry Martini or the OCD and the Rat pedal got very close to the Percolator in some settings. Probably the Dry Martini or the OCD edges it slightly, because with lower gain settings there we were getting very close to the tones that we were getting with the Percolator. Now with the Rat you have to get the distortion way down to get similar levels to the Percolator, and I think the Rat has a slightly smoother, slightly more raunchy, slightly more glam rock sort of a response, whereas the Percolator is more abrasive and more aggressive and more kind of nasal sounding in a sense. But they're both wonderful sounding pedals, and I think you could hear when I stacked them that they sound like a huge wall of sound as well. Now I did have this loop running exclusively on the clean channel of the amplifier, and the Boss DS1 doesn't really shine there, and it doesn't have that much headroom either, so I had it dimed all the way in terms of level and it still wasn't quite there compared to the other pedals. And it's a different sound and a different tonal character to the others as well, but it gives you something totally different, and if that's your thing, well, you should definitely buy a DS1 over an Electro-Harmonix Percolator. But with the distortions here, very happy with how close I was getting with the OCD and with the Rat as well. And I love an OCD and I love a Rat, and I love the fact that the Percolator can sound similar to those as well. So we've crossed off the overdrives and we've crossed off the distortions as well. But the Percolator is perhaps primarily known as being a fuzz pedal, so now it's time to test it out against 3 of my fuzz pedals and we'll hear how it stacks up. Now for me personally, fuzz for the last few years has been one of my favorite effects. I've got loads of fuzz pedals and it was a challenge to find 3 that I wanted to put into this comparison for you guys today. I probably will be doing more videos in the future where I test out more fuzz pedals against the Percolator, but which did I go for today? Well, I went for these 3. I went for the DOD Carcosa, I went for the Electro-Harmonix Op-Amp Big Muff, and I went for the Walrus Audio Fundamental Fuzz. So why did I choose these 3? Well, first off, they're all about $100 or €100, so they're very similarly priced to the Percolator in that sense. So if you're looking for a $100 fuzz, well, they should all be on your shortlist. And with the DOD Carcosa, well, this is a hugely versatile fuzz. It gets you into distortion territory too, but with the wealth of controls and the switch that we've got on this one, you can really control the amount of gated, velcro-y, squelchy, fuzzy goodness that you're getting out of this pedal, and it's got a really practical high-cut knob as well. So that's going to be something that we really should be able to dial in to sound similar to the Percolator, especially in those gated, spluttery, voltage-starved sorts of settings. Now when it came to the Electro-Harmonix Op-Amp Big Muff, well, I went for the Op-Amp Big Muff because it's my newest Big Muff in my collection and it's currently my favorite. I don't think a Big Muff on its own is going to sound that similar to the Percolator, but it's one of the biggest selling fuzz pedals of all time, and the Op-Amp might get us a bit closer because it's more of a raunchy and raw sounding sort of a fuzz, and we've got the tone bypass switch on this one as well, which I will use to try and get it sounding similar. I don't think we're going to get any of the gated tones out of this pedal that you could get with the Percolator, but that's going to be worth a try. And the third fuzz here, the Walrus Audio Fundamental Fuzz, well, that has 3 different fuzz settings and one of them is a gated setting, and so that's why I've picked this pedal for this specific comparison. Now you've got the 3 different modes here. They're going to be gated, classic, which is a classic Big Muff sort of a sound, and a mid plus one, which is going to be a mid pushed version of a Big Muff, a bit closer to an Op-Amp Big Muff or something like that. Now this is a very aggressive sounding fuzz pedal, so I'm probably going to have the fuzz slider way down on this one, but I'm hopeful that we can get it sounding fairly similar to the Percolator. Now let's listen to this one, let me know what you think, and for this final loop, well, I'm going to be playing the bridge single coil pickup on my Fender Telecaster again. So we're 9 pedals down against the Percolator, and I'm massively impressed again. This is a huge sounding fuzz, and it does do so many different flavors of fuzz as well. I think the closest of the 3 was the DOD Carcosa, and again I've reinforced how much I love this pedal. These two together are amazing, and you can dial them in to sound very similar indeed. I think overall the Percolator is going to be the more kind of versatile of the two because it does softer, cleaner boosts and overdrive sounds as well, but the Carcosa really nails that gated, spluttery sort of fuzz, and it gives us some of the more fuller fuzz tones that you get from the Percolator as well. I hope that you notice some of the sort of pseudo-octave sounds that are coming out of the Percolator, by the way. I didn't hear any of those with any of the other pedals, so this is something that's going to be unique to this one, at least in this video. Now the op-amp Big Muff was the least close of the 3 in terms of sounding similar to the Percolator, but it has that huge Big Muff tone which is just amazing for so many other things. And I really liked how the Walrus Fundamental Fuzz sort of stacked up against the Percolator. We got some great tones out of the gated setting and the mid-pushed muff sound as well. Well, they sounded really good. Like I thought before, there's way too much gain on tap to really compare the two in certain settings, but overall you can get quite close in some senses with the Walrus. But again, the Percolator really holds its head high against all 9 of these pedals. I'm super impressed with how it sounds. It is a wonderful sounding pedal, and I hope that these different loops have given you an overall impression of what sort of tones you can get out of this pedal. Now I did promise you just a couple of other things that I'm going to show for you now. First, I wanted to do a little riff so you can hear how the pedal sounds when it's got a buffer in front of it compared to when it doesn't have a buffer in front of it. So the first riff there was running into the Boss RC10 looper, then into the Percolator, and the second riff was running straight from the guitar cable into the input of the Percolator with no Boss looper in the way. And my personal opinion is that the buffer doesn't make that much difference at all. Like I said though earlier on, people like Steve Albini did use the Harmonic Percolator with a buffer in front of it because it gave them a more aggressive sort of a sound, and they really liked that. But I don't think it's a game changer or a deal breaker in any way, shape or form, and I actually personally think I prefer it just slightly with the buffer in front because it gives you a bit more gain, and that just works for me personally. And otherwise, the other thing I want to show you is that internal trim pot. So it's time to get the screwdrivers out and we'll hear how that changes the sounds as well. So I definitely think that the internal trim pot is something that you can set and forget, and you might want to play around with it a bit, but it's a really insignificant overall tonal shift, at least to my ears, and it comes from the factory set at 50% right in the middle, and that's where I would leave it if I were you. But if you really want to tweak it, and if you really want to get more or less of those pseudo octave sounds, well, that's something that you can experiment with the internal trim pot yourself. So overall then, I'm a huge fan of this pedal. It sounds fantastic, it's incredibly versatile, and it's very different to all of my other drive pedals, while at the same time being able to mimic most of them in some way, shape or form as well. So this is a fantastic sounding pedal. What else do I like about it? Well, I think the price is right. 99 bucks, 99 euros, very, very affordable in the modern scheme of things. I think it looks great as well. I'm probably going to get my own label maker and put my own labels over it so it feels 3D as well as just looking like this. But I think it is a great pedal in pretty much every sense. Are there any downsides? Well, it's all relative, and I think for this price point, for what you're getting out of it, I don't see anything wrong with this pedal whatsoever. Now, of course, you could say, does it sound as good as a dedicated fuzz when you're doing fuzz? Well, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, but it definitely sounds different, and the same with overdrive and distortion. But I definitely don't think that this is a jack of all trades and a master of none. I think it excels at all the tonal sounds that it makes, and you should definitely try this out if you're looking for a different flavour of gain in your tonal arsenal. So that's the Percolator then. If you've been watching this video though, you're wondering what else could be out there. Well, there's not that many when it comes to harmonic percolators. Now, if you want one of the originals, those are going to be very hard to come by. They're very rare, and therefore they're going to be very expensive. But there is a very, very well made and true to the original NOS kind of version made these days by the folks at Theramaniacs. I'll put a link down there if you'd like to check those out. And there are some other pedals that do that harmonic percolator thing. I've never played the ones from Frederick Effects that do it, but I've loved every pedal that I've tried by Frederick Effects, so I'll be trying out some of their percolator pedals as soon as I get the chance. And the best of the rest that I've otherwise heard about so far is the cattle inbred Karma Sutua, but I haven't had the chance to play one of those in person either. But like we've already heard in the preceding parts of this video, if you want to get close to some of the things the percolator can do, you can use your other drives, distortions and fuzzes, perhaps stacking some of them together to get yourself into this sort of territory. But if you liked any of the sounds that appeared in this video or the other percolator videos that are no doubt out there by now, well, I highly recommend that you check this pedal out. I think for this price, the build quality that you're getting, I think the tones that you're getting, it's an absolute no-brainer. And like I said, it's inspired a new bout of creativity within me. New music is going to be coming, and what more can you want from a pedal than a pedal that makes you create more new music? Anyway, I know this has been a very long video and I apologize for that, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it's answered any of the questions that you may have had about the Electro-Harmonix Percolator. But if there's anything else you'd like to know, drop me a line down there in the comments and I shall do my best to answer you. And as you guys know, I've got hundreds of drive pedals of every shape, size and form. Is there anything else that I've got that you know that you'd like me to shoot out against the Percolator? Let me know and I shall try and make that happen. But that's been it for today's video. Give me a like and a sub if you haven't already, because that really does help. But I've been Rich, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.